Can you hear me, Jim?
Morning, Commissioner Pinocci. I sure can. Can you hear me?
I hear you fine. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. You bet. All right. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
The time is now 9:31 a.m. Today's date is Tuesday, July 9th, 2024. This is the time and place for our regularly scheduled business meeting. We are in the offices of the Public Service Commission. We are in the Bollinger Conference Room. Would my colleagues join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States. All right. Thank you, colleagues. I would note for the record that Commissioner O'Donnell, myself, Vice President Fielder, and Commissioner Bukacek are present in the Bollinger Room. Commissioner Pinocci is participating online, so we do have quorum this morning. All right, the Montana Public Service Commission welcomes public comment on any matter that is on today's agenda or on any matter that is within the jurisdiction of the Montana Public Service Commission. Are there any public commenters in the room? Public commenters in the room? Seeing none. Any public commenters online? I'm informed there are not, so no public comment this morning. We do not have any changes to the agenda this morning. We will roll right into our action items. Action item number 1 is approval of the draft commission minutes for the week of June 24th, 2024. Is there a motion, Vice President Fielder?
Mr. President, I move approval of the minutes for the week of June 24th.
Is there a second? Commissioner O'Donnell has seconded. A motion and second. Discussion on the draft minutes for the week of June 24th, 2024, or revisions, edits, changes? The minutes as drafted? Seeing none, all those in favor of Vice President Fielder's motion to adopt the draft commission minutes for the week of June 24, 24 as the final Minutes of that meeting, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed signify by saying no. Seeing no opposition, motion carries unanimously. All right, Commissioner Panoche, I'm just confirming that you can still hear us.
I can, and I did say aye.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's move to the work session items. Work session item number 1 is docket 2024.07.072. This is a commission initiated matter. This is the amendment of Administrative Rule of Montana 38.2.101. Commission is here to consider amending ARM 38.2101 to reflect the current version of the model rules concerning declaratory rulings and remove references to repealed model rules. Ms. Webster, good morning.
Good morning, President Brown and Commissioners. My name is Amanda Webster. I'm a staff attorney for the Commission. The proposed rulemaking before you is a matter of housekeeping. As President Brown mentioned, the purpose is to delete references to model rules that were repealed by the Secretary of State at the end of June of this year and incorporate by reference the current version of the model rules concerning declaratory rulings, which have been in place since about 2008 and are consistent with the Montana Administrative Procedure Act statute on declaratory rulings. Staff recommends that the commission approve the draft notice of proposed rulemaking, after which there will be a public comment period through August 23rd in docket 2024.07.072. I'd be happy to take any questions at this time.
All right, thank you, Ms. Webster. Is there a motion, Vice President Fielder?
Mr. President, I move to approve the draft notice of proposed amendment to ARM 38.2.101 and authorize staff to make any substantive changes required for publication in the Montana Administrative Register.
Is there a second? Commissioner O'Donnell seconded. Motion and second. Discussion? Discussion? So just a clarification for you, Ms. Webster, for my own understanding. So as I understand, what we're doing today is essentially updating our rules to match those model rules adopted by the Montana Secretary of State. Is that correct?
President Brown and Commissioners, that is correct. The Commission historically had only adopted the model rules concerning rulemaking and declaratory rulings because we have our own administrative rules for our contested case proceedings. Because the Secretary of State has moved their rules around a lot in June, we're only keeping the model rules concerning declaratory rulings, and the rules that we have cover most of our own procedures. We may consider updating some of our other rules concerning contested cases in the future, and we would look at the Secretary of State's rules on that for guidance.
All right, so to follow up on that, so what we're doing here today is pretty limited. Essentially, what we're doing is adopting Secretary of State's model rule for seeking declaratory relief or a decision, correct?
Yes, that's correct. We're updating our rules to just incorporate the current version of those rules.
Very good, but I'm gonna follow up. So as I understood what you stated in your opening is that we were working under the 2008 model rule.
The Commission's Administrative Rule 38.2.101 had not been amended since 1977. And there's a statute that says that if we adopt a rule by reference, we adopted at the time it was last amended. So we hadn't made an update to this rule since 1977. So we're incorporating the current version, which was last amended in 2008.
Very good. Additional discussion? Additional discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Vice President Fielder's motion to amend Administrative Rule of Montana 38.2101, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying no. Seeing no opposition, motion carries unanimously. Randy, you came through loud and clear that time. Thank you. All right. Work session item number 2. This is a commission initiated matter. This is coming from the Blue Book Committee. We're here to consider tranche 4 of the PSC's Blue Book policies. More specifically, we're here to consider adopting 4 policies included in Tranche 4, which incorporate the internal policy manual policy, the administration policy, code of conduct policy, and records management. Vice President Fielder.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think what I'll do is make a motion, and then if I may open on the item, if it gets a second, I'll explain the project a little bit further. So, Mr. President, I move commission adoption of the 4 policies included in Tranche 4 to go into immediate effect, supplanting any existing policies of similar nature and allowing clerical, non-substantive edits and compilation along with other adopted policies into the final Department of Public Service Regulation Internal Policy Manual. I will note, Mr. President, that my motion includes clerical work to ensure consistency between our administrative rule and our administrative organizational rule and our administrative policy to make sure that those duties are aligned. Thank you, Mr. President.
And I'll second the motion. Discussion. Vice President Fielder.
Thank you, Mr. President. As you are aware, and I think most commissioners are, the Blue Book Committee was established in July 2021 by the commission. And it includes 2 members of the commission, being Commissioner Pinocci and myself, our chief legal counsel, our regulatory division administrator, our commission secretary. And at that time, we had an internal auditor who was also appointed to the committee and was very instrumental in several of the policies that have come before the commission and continue to come. Other staff were consulted throughout the process by the members of the committee and provided opportunity to review and comment and actually edit regarding their areas of expertise and areas of operation. So it's been a very good, I think, thorough collaborative process. The goals have been to produce a clear, effective policy manual that we can use to guide the operations of the agency, to breathe life into the objectives that we established in the strategic plan to restore order and elevate the standards and the performance of our agency and its credibility, and to be responsive to the recommendations that the auditors had found prior to 2021 when there were several problems within the operations of the agency. The standards that have been put into place so far, or the policies that have been adopted so far, include 22 policies in 3 tranches adopted by the commission. So this tranche is 4 of the final policies. There's 1 more yet to come, hopefully within the next few weeks, and that will complete the process or the project if they all meet with commission approval. I would note that the 22 policies that we've adopted so far have greatly contributed to the commission's efforts in working with our staff to transform this agency from what was once a rather chaotic place of discord into a much more harmonious, healthy, and productive workplace environment where ideas can be respectfully debated, but we can always do so civilly and follow our rules of procedures. And the policies that you have before you today further build on that. The administration policy reflects the strategic planning decisions and organization that was adopted by the commission in both the strategic planning initiative work that the commission did in early 2021, as well as the administrative rule that the commission adopted for the organization of the agency. I would say that the committee and all involved have been very thoughtful and diligent in this work over the past 3 years and produced very good work product. Both the production of it and the adherence to these higher standards has been a benefit to the agency, to the people that work here, and also to the public we serve. The department is a better place to work. It's become more well-respected. It's more functional and more productive than ever. And I think the policies also are designed to not just think about where we're at now and where we've been in the past, but establishing stability and good standards going forward for anyone who may occupy these seats in the future. So with that, Mr. President, I would like to take one by one and do a brief explanation.
If I may, would you do the courtesy of informing the public who has served on the Blue Book Committee?
Yes, sir. The members of the Blue Book Committee were Commissioner Pinocci, Commissioner Fielder, and I was the chair of the committee. Our chief regulator, Mr. Will Rosequist, head of the regulatory division. Our chief legal counsel, which has changed over the last 3 years, but over the past 2 years, I believe, has been Lucas Hamilton. And our commission secretary, Patricia Troyan. And early on, we had Mr. Chet McLean, who was our CPA internal auditor. Those are the members of the committee, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I would like to go through, there's 2 amendments that I have to propose to these policies. And I did send out a memo with a summary of each policy, so I don't, unless the commission would like me to explain each one, I think you've had time to review them and review the summary. So I will just give a brief comment. And we'll go through in the order here that they appear in our notebook. So the first one is administration. And the administration policy describes the mission, vision, and duties of the Department of Public Service Regulation and the administrative framework for department operations in accordance with the administrative rules of Montana. That's our ARM 38.1.101. This policy further defines and clarifies the organizational structure of the department, its duties of the various positions, areas of operation, and chain of command protocols that support the professional, orderly work of the department. Largely, this policy has been in place based on the concepts and the conceptual organizational charts we adopted back in 2021. But this policy further clarifies, defines, and elaborates on that, and it includes those 3 organizational charts in the appendices, which for those that are looking closely, those appendices do need some typographical corrections and will undergo those in the clerical work, Mr. President. And I do have one amendment to the administration policy to propose, if I may.
Go ahead.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, on page 7, it is part 2.10.3.2. The paragraph on IT and administrative support.
I'm sorry, Vice President, one more time on the paragraph.
2.10.3.2.
Thank you.
It's at the very bottom of page 7 is where I'm going to move the amendment so everyone can follow along. Mr. Chairman, there is a sentence, the final sentence on the bottom of page 7 says, and provides up to 2 hours per week of individualized secretarial and technology support to each commissioner. My motion, Mr. Chairman, is to change 2 hours to 1 hour. And if there's a second, I'll explain it.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner O'Donnell. Mr. Chairman, if I may. The purpose for this, we have other places in the policies where we have identified 1 hour of personal administrative type support for each commissioner per week, where they can call on secretarial and IT support to help in supporting their job functions. Initially, we were thinking 2 hours, but that can total 10 hours a week, and it was a pretty big hit for our front office staff. So it was 2 hours earlier, but we've identified 1 hour in the rest of the policies. And so this change would make it consistent that it would be 1 hour, that commissioners can freely call upon that support.
Clarify, it says 1 hour per week. So
1 hour per week.
2 hours a day, 10 hours a week. It would be just still the 1 or 2. I mean, you said
Per
I'm
day.
confused. You said 5 days a week times 2 hours is 10 hours a week. It would just be 1 or 2.
Mr. President, what I was thinking of 5 commissioners at 2 hours per commissioner per week would be 10 hours impact on our front office staff. So this would set that parameter at 1 hour per commissioner for drawing upon the staff for administrative support and IT support functions specific to their individual needs related to their job. And of course, the policies in other places do explain that that would be subject to staff availability and prioritization by appropriate supervisors, because at some point they may have to balance that with other demands of the agency. So my motion is to change 2 hours to 1 hour in 2.10.3.2, Mr. President.
Discussion? Commissioner O'Donnell.
I just wanted to point out that that aligns consistency with 2.13.1.6.3. Individual commissioners may utilize up to 1 hour per week. So there's a consistency. There was a conflict right there, but now it's consistent with what's in there.
Additional discussion?
One other point, and that is that it says 1 hour a week. I have, in my 7.5 years here, I've never known any administrative staff. I haven't called upon them for very much, but I don't see a stopwatch any place. They're the most cooperative, professional staff that anybody could have.
Additional discussion?
Mr. President, I think Commissioner O'Donnell's observations are correct. This is guidance in case somebody just doesn't know or understand and may expect more from the staff, or may not know that they have that allowance available to them. So by having it in our policy, at least everyone now is on the same page literally and understands what the parameter is. We do not need to call upon staff that much, but if we need to, we know that we have that available to us.
Additional discussion?
Mr. President, there's been a couple of instances where some IT problems have been more than 1 hour. And I would like to think that we wouldn't stop at 1 hour before the problem was finished. In most cases, I don't think commissioners use the 1 hour a week, but sometimes when we run into a train wreck, it could take more than an hour. And I do think that we should have some consideration in case there is an issue like that to get it finished and resolved.
Do you want to address that, Vice President Fielder?
Mr. President, yes, thank you, Commissioner. I think that the idea behind these policies is they provide a guideline that makes sense, but they're not meant to be a hammer to necessarily thwart common sense activity at the agency to allow it to go on. And sometimes these technology problems are, widespread across the agency. So I think that common sense would come into play. This was more of a parameter for commissioners' requests to just make sure that commissioners understand that the staff has other work to do, and we need to be respectful of that and not ask too much of them. There's going to be times where we've got special projects going on, and they're going to be authorized by their supervisors or management to do more. This wouldn't prohibit that at all.
Additional discussion? Commissioner Bukacek? Is your microphone on?
Yes, 2.13.1.2. I'll just read it. It's short.
Mr. Chairman, and with all due respect, there's a motion on just that one. Is this one?
Yeah, we're on the motion.
Okay, finish that motion then.
Right. And additional discussion on the current motion to amend to 1 hour. Seeing none, all those in favor of Vice President Fielder's motion to amend 2.10.3.2, move from 2 hours to 1 hour, signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed signify by saying no. All right, motion carries. All right, Commissioner Bukacek. Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on. You got another amendment, Vice President Fielder?
I do not have another amendment on the administration policy, Mr. President.
Okay. All right. Is your amendment on the administration policy?
It's not an amendment. It's just something I think is worthy of discussion, and then down the road, further discussion and probably.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, so it's page 10, 2.13.1.2. I'll just read it for the sake of the public. Individual commissioners go through the president to request commission meetings, work sessions, schedule changes, agenda items, or actions of the commission. And I think that that warrants in the future a discussion about an appeal process. I don't have an amendment today because I think it would require significant discussion to come up with an amendment. I bring this to our attention because everyone is fallible, including anyone who is president. And so for future discussion, because nothing in this blue book is set in stone. And I think that's something that we should talk about in the future. Thank you, sir. One other thing, 2.13.1.1.1, which is above that, it says the president reports to and is directed by the commission. And all of our votes are equal. So that ties into the 2.13.1.2. Thank you.
Additional discussion? Commissioner O'Donnell?
So in discussions with Commissioner Fielder and Lucas Hamilton, in 2.10.4.5, where it says the duties of the regulatory compliance specialists, one of the things that was missing was consumer assistance on there. I'm assured that that is going to be clarified through the original motion is to clarify edits and clarification, so it doesn't need to have a specific motion for that. So I do have some on the code of conduct, but we're through with administration.
Mr. President, just a response to Commissioner O'Donnell's point there. Yes, my motion does recognize that there are we found at least one discrepancy between the administrative rule and these duties that are described here. When we drafted these, we pulled them from the administrative rule and put them in here and then elaborated in some areas on them. But there was one that you pointed out that was a discrepancy. And so in case there are any others, that's why I made my motion kind of a catch-all in case we see anything else that would be a contradiction. So I think it's without objection, that would be covered under clerical work.
All right. Any further discussion on the admin policy? All right, Vice President Fielder.
Can we adopt that one and then move on to the others?
Well, you've moved it. You've moved it as a package at this point.
Okay. All right. So we'll just leave that one there and then we'll move the whole vote on the whole package.
I mean, you could move to segregate and adopt.
I think it would be clean so we can just kind of take care of one by one because I think one of these is going to have a lot of discussion and I don't want to get these other ones wrapped up in it.
Right,
So why don't we
I
just
would
get
entertain
these?
a motion then.
Okay. Mr. President, I move to segregate the administration policy. And if that motion is successful, I'll move to adopt it as amended.
All right, I'll second the motion to segregate. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of segregating this policy signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed signify by saying no. Seeing no opposition, policy is segregated. All right, Vice President Fielder, do you want to make a?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I move adoption of the administration policy as amended and providing for the clerical work to clean it up as per the original motion.
All right, is there a second? Commissioner O'Donnell has seconded. Motion second. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the Vice President's motion to adopt the admin policy as once amended signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying no. Seeing no opposition, motion carries. All right, thank you, colleagues. Vice President Fielder.
Mr. President, I think what I'd like to do here is go ahead and move some of the other policies that I think are going to have less or move into the other policies that probably are going to be easier to pass and have less debate. And that way we can reserve the rest of the time for discussion on the policy that I think there's going to be more discussion on, if that's all right with everybody. Okay, so Mr. President, I will move to I do not have amendments for the record management policy or the internal policy manual policy. So I will move to segregate out the code of conduct policy so we can deal with that separately.
All right. Although I'll second the motion to segregate the code of conduct. A discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion to segregate the code of conduct signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed signify by saying no. Seeing no opposition, the motion to segregate is passed. Vice President Fielder?
Mr. President, I'd like to move the adoption of the internal policy manual.
Well, we're on the,
Well, we segregated it, so now it's separate.
Okay.
And now I'd like to address the other two policies that I don't think we have a lot of discussion or amendments on, to move them along, and then we can spend the rest of our time on the one that was just segregated out.
all right, very good.
All right. So I will move adoption of the internal policy manual policy, Mr. President.
Well, do you want to move them as a package?
Sure, Mr. President, thank you. In that motion, I also move adoption of the records management policy.
All right, I'll second. We have motion and second. Discussion on either of those policies?
Mr. President, just a small amount of discussion on the internal policy manual policy, and I apologize, I think that one was in our booklet first. There's some clerical work on this one that will occur. It just, some of the language of what we're calling the policies got mixed up. It's titled as PSC Internal Policy Manual. It will be the Department of Public Service Regulation Internal Policy Manual, or IPM. So we'll make those changes in there, but they are clerical, but just FYI. And I do not have any substantive amendments from the committee or that I've been informed about by anybody on that one. So I'd ask for us to go ahead and vote and approve those out.
Any further discussion on either of those policies? Okay, all those in favor of adopting the internal policy manual policy and the records retention policy signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed signify by saying no. Seeing no opposition, motion carries. All right, that brings us back to the segregated code of conduct. Vice President Fielder?
Thank you, Mr. President and colleagues. I move amendment to the code of conduct policy as follows. That would be under 2.1.4, discipline for noncompliance.
Mr. President, procedurally, shouldn't we vote on the, have a motion to accept the policy and then have amendments to that?
Yes.
Is that the proper procedure?
I wondered about that.
Yeah, can you move that?
I'll go ahead. I thought we moved it at the beginning, but we segregated.
Right, correct.
Okay, thank you. So yes, Mr. President, I will move adoption of the code of conduct policy, and should there be a second, I'll move an amendment to that.
All right, is there a second? Commissioner O'Donnell seconding today.
Okay. Mr. President, thank you. Commissioners, you should have received a proposed amendment that came out from Lucas Hamilton, sent out and prepared for us. This amendment deals with the discipline for noncompliance. And this section of the policy is
Can you reference this section again?
2.14. 2.14, it's on page 7 of the Code of Conduct policy, and it's the lower half of the page. Okay, so the amendment, we don't all have a copy of that in front of us.
No.
I'm sorry, I thought Patricia distributed those, but I will read through it. They're in the front of the tab. Oh, yeah, yeah. Commissioner Bukacek has it. You should see it underlined because it's just additional language. It's not stricken language. So on the bottom of page 7 of the Code of Conduct policy, in that section 2.14, you should see some underlined language. And that is the amendment I move, Mr. President, to amend this policy. And I will note that, well, if there's a second, I'll go ahead and explain it.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
Can you
President.
read the, yeah, Go ahead.
Yes, this would add that in the first paragraph, which currently reads, the response team may make a recommendation to the commission and the commission has authority to act on the recommendation. Insert at a properly noticed public meeting. The second part of the amendment is in the next paragraph 2.1.4.1.1, which says removal of a commission officer from his or her post as an officer of the commission, that's current language, would be followed by the inserted language by a 4/5 majority of the commission. The next part of the amendment is in the next paragraph, which also requires a 4/5 majority vote of the commission for that action. And then 2.1.4.13, the third paragraph, says by a vote of 3 commissioners. And if there's second on that, I'll explain it. Is there a second on that? I'm sure I lost where we.
Yeah, I seconded.
Okay, thank you. So the reason for this is that discipline of any member of the department, whether it be staff or commissioners, is a very serious matter and should have a higher threshold on it so that there's less likelihood for a small group of people, gang, so to speak, on someone else. It would have to be, something that 4/5 of the commission agree is the correct action to take. So that's why the 4/5 majority is included in the amendment rather than a simple majority for the first 2 portions. And then the discipline regarding the executive director would be a vote by 3 commissioners because 3 commissioners do have that authority now to hire and dismiss the personnel that's appointed. And so that would be consistent with those powers that the commission already has and not contradictory to it. But we wanted to make sure it wasn't 2-to-1 type vote on something like that, that it would have to be a vote of essentially the full commission would be notified that they can participate, but it would take 3 commissioners to vote for the action. So we won't see a 2-to-1 vote on these matters. It'll be either be 3 to something or 4 to something. Possibly. Thank you, Mr. President.
Discussion on the amendment, Commissioner Bukacek?
I think those are excellent changes, and I just wanted to clarify, a commission officer is the vice president or the president, correct, for the sake of the public? And so that would just be removing them from their office as vice president or president. It would not be removing them from the commission. They are elected officials. They cannot be removed this way from being a commissioner.
That's correct, Commissioner Bukacek. Yeah, it would be to relieve them from the posts that the commission had previously positioned them
I just
in.
wanted to have that clarified.
Not contradicting the public vote to put them in as office holders as commissioners.
Excellent. Thank you.
Excellent question, Commissioner Bukacek. Additional discussion?
Mr. President, I'll just say that this item was discussed by the group that met yesterday for the informational meeting, the group of commissioners and staff that met, and there was complete consensus on making this amendment. It is a substantive amendment, but there was complete consensus of the commissioners and staff in the working meeting yesterday on this one. So I think it's fair to say that it has the support of the Blue Book Committee as well as the others that attended that meeting.
Additional discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Vice President Fielder's motion signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed signify by saying no. Being no opposition, motion carries. Vice President Fielder?
Mr. President, I have no further amendments that are recommended on the Code of Conduct policy, but I understand there may be some other amendments proposed by some other commissioners.
Additional discussion or amendments on the Code of Conduct? Commissioner O'Donnell, lean forward.
Thank you. There were a couple of things that are important, just to follow up on what Commissioner Fielder was talking about, penalties involved in on page 6 of this in 2.12.1. The last sentence says department personnel who retaliate are subject to disciplinary action up to and including termination of their employment. Prior to this, there's a whole bunch of different things that somebody could do wrong. For instance, in 2.1.5, threatening, abusive, obscene, or derisive behavior or communications are strictly prohibited. There's a bunch of things on there that people should not do. And it seems to me that this one sentence right here only specifies a penalty for retaliation. And it should be if violation of any of these things are subject to disciplinary action. So I regard that as a non-substantive change to it, that should be heading for all violation of all of these policies are subject to, depending on the egregiousness of the violation. So I don't think that needs a motion.
I'm not sure what, can you, right? I mean,
Well, it says are subject to disciplinary action up to including termination of their employment. That's only, the language only applies to retaliation. It should apply to all violations of policy by any member of the commission, of the staff. And as in particular, I'm pointing at 2.1.5, threatening, abusive, obscene, or derisive behavior or communication are strictly prohibited. Okay, so then, so what? So what if somebody does that? What's the penalty for it? So there are several things in here that should be, that fall under that headline of subject to disciplinary action up to and including termination of employment. That's all I'm saying, is that language right there should be umbrella language instead of specifically only referring to retaliation.
Mr. President,
yes, Vice President Fielder.
we may want to call on Mr. Hamilton, who the legal division drafted the policy. It's my understanding that retaliation is a separate heading for a specific reason, but that doesn't limit the lawful extent of discipline that can be enacted in the department for under the law. Mr. President, Mr. Hamilton.
Yes, Mr. President and Commissioners, and Commissioner O'Donnell, to your point, the retaliation language that appears in section 2.12 is borrowed from the statewide policy on retaliation. And so for that reason, I think it's important to keep the language there as it exists. I would note that for other violations of the policy, code of conduct policy writ large, you can refer to section 2.14, discipline for noncompliance, which discusses the ability for the response team to make a recommendation to the president in the case of noncompliance by commissioners or by appointed staff, or make a recommendation to the executive director with respect to classified staff of the agency, and that discipline imposed by those various members of the organization can include termination of employment. So you do still have that ability.
Good. Okay, as long as that's clear on there. Thank you for that clarification. I wanted to also do something that probably should be a motion on, legal counsel can point this out also. On page 4 of that section, 2.6.1.3, commissioners shall be unswayed by personal or partisan interests, pressure from special interests, or fear of criticism. I notice in that 2.6.12345 the language is a commissioner should, a commissioner should, a commissioner should, a commissioner should. And then in the middle of all that is commissioner shall. Like many people, conservatives, I guess, I chafe under rules, and the word shall seems to be way too constricted. It should be, as Commissioner Fielder was pointing out and earlier, is that these are expectations of what commissioners should be doing. I agree with all of the other shoulds, and it seems to me that that 2.6.1.3 and as well as 2.3.3 also says shall, that I think it would be more consistent with the rest of the document that be as a document of guidance. It should be The word should be should.
So do you want to make that a motion saying that you move to amend 2.6.1.3 to change the word shall to should?
Thank you. And also in that motion, 2.3.3. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, is there a second for that?
I second.
All right, Commissioner Bukacek. So we have a motion and discussion on the amendment to amend 2.6.1.3 and 2.3.3 to strike the word shall and substitute with the word should. Discussion.
Mr. President,
Vice President Fields.
I appreciate the sentiment there. I believe that the work of the committee was thoughtful on these matters, and I think the intent of the ones that are shalls are because those are really legal matters. Those are tied to our legal obligations as commissioners. And so the intent here is to be very specific that these shall not occur. The other ones where there's the word should would be, we need to try. But those ones that are shall, I think shall is in there for a specific reason. And I think it'd probably be best at this point to honor the work of the committee and leave it as is.
Additional discussion, Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you. And I certainly understand that explanation. So what I'm saying is commissioners shall be unswayed by personal or partisan interests, pressures from special interests, or fear of criticism. Those are all incredibly subjective. So to say, to have the threshold shall to something that's subjective, how in the world would anybody ever determine that somebody, unless by admission, they say, well, so-and-so told me to vote this way from the utility or from this lobby or whatever like this, you know, or my wife said that she's never going to, you know, kiss me again if I vote this way or whatever, you know, something like that. But that is the word shall on that thing for something that is so amorphous, I think is awfully constrictive, and it should be what the intent is, rather than. And I agree with so going up to ticks, the one above it, point two, is that a commissioner should base his or her decisions, deliberations, and votes on the law and the facts. Okay, that's true. Okay, but then it's followed up by the very next sentence. In contested cases, commissioners must review and base decisions on record. That should be record evidence instead of recorded on there. But so I agree with the intent of what you pointed out. I still feel very strongly that should be listed as a guideline and not as an absolute requirement because of the subjectivity of it.
Further discussion, Commissioner Bukacek.
I heartily agree with Commissioner O'Donnell, and you spoke earlier, Vice President, about these are guidelines, not a hammer. To say shall for something that would almost require you to read someone's mind, I think is completely inappropriate. And so, like I said, I heartily agree. It's two simple word changes that make this a much more palatable policy. As it currently stands, I can't support this policy. I think putting in shalls for something that involves, you know, having to read someone's mind would have the effect of limiting, if not intimidating, alternative viewpoints. The agency and especially the commissioners cannot afford to have staff and peers hesitating, expressing a free exchange of information for fear of being turned in. The policy admitted as written, which I'll discuss with my amendment, contribute to limiting public oversight of the agency. We currently have an extremely amicable, open, and cooperative environment here at the agency. And this policy has the potential to turn this extremely pleasant work environment into one that is toxic with far-reaching implications for staff and the commissioners for years to come, long after we commissioners are termed out. So I support it wholeheartedly. Thank you, Commissioner O'Donnell.
All right, additional discussion?
Mr. President.
Vice President Fielder?
You know, the commission's will on this, I think, whichever way it goes, I think the intent here is to provide instruction. And to Commissioner O'Donnell's point about, I think it helps commissioners to know that, no, you shouldn't sit up here and say, hey, my wife said she'd never kiss me if I don't vote this way, because you shouldn't. And those are the types of comments that get this commission into trouble. And it's not necessarily, that's kind of a joke, but there's sometimes comments made where a commissioner references something other than the law and the facts they are required to base their decision on. And so this was written to direct and be instructive for commissioners to be very, very careful about what they are basing their opinion on, their decision on when we deliberate, and to try to help us not have our decisions overturned by a court of law that would say that we made an arbitrary or capricious decision. That's been a kind of a plague in the past of the commission. That's the intent of this. It's not anything like what Commissioner Bukacek had described, but whatever the commission's will is on the shall and should, I think it's instructive either way.
Exactly. Instructive. Or you said you use the word careful.
So go through the chair.
Oops, right.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
I'm violating rules talking about the rules.
Before I call on you again, Commissioner Bukacek, Commissioner Pinocci, do you want to weigh in on this?
I've been having a hard time hearing Tony. He's not talking into his mic. And Tony, could you repeat that? I'm trying to understand what you're saying.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I pointed out that basically Commissioner Fielder understood my intent very well when she said that these are meant to instruct commissioners to be careful about what they say, so they don't indicate that they've been swayed one way or the other. They are instructional. Again, her word, very excellent word, careful and instructional. I think those are exactly the right sentiments that this should convey, and therefore the word should be should instead of shall. Is that, you understand my point?
I do. Thank you. President Brown, I'm very interested in your opinion on this.
I will be giving it shortly. Commissioner Bukacek.
Again, I want to say I understand the historical background for the reasons for this, and I also understand, and I have no reason to think there's anything but good intentions, but we know what can happen despite good intentions. And so I think for your talking about direction of the commissioner's instruction guidelines, the word should is more than adequate.
All right, I've been asked to weigh in on this, so I'm going to oppose the amendment upholding the language as drafted, and I don't take this position on coming from a position where I disagree with anything that my colleagues have said about their beliefs on this. I recognize their positions on this. I'll oppose the amendment because I believe that the shall language is commensurate with our work here at the commission and the duties assigned to us by the Montana legislature, which is to be a impartial, fair arbiter of proceedings that come before the commission and which we're authorized to adjudicate. I appreciate that the language here is laudatory in nature and could be difficult to enforce. I recognize that, but the language itself, I segregate from the enforcement action that my colleagues have expressed concerns about. As my colleagues are aware, we went through a performance audit for years. And one of the recommendations of that performance audit was for us to adopt a code of conduct, which is what we're acting on today. And the thrust, or at least a some thrust of the auditor's remarks was for us to adopt a code that demonstrated that we would exercise independent judgment in order to fully carry out our duties. And so I think that the language as written, which is instructive to all of us as to make our decisions based on appropriate factors such as record, not recorded evidence, as you correctly pointed out, that intention, I think, of the auditors is carried through by us adopting a policy that has the shall language. I have not seen, that being said, I have not seen in my 3 years and 6 months on the commission any indication that any commissioner at any time has made any decision on anything but neutral grounds and recorded evidence. Even so, I do believe that commission itself should try to hold itself to the highest standards, and we would do so by maintaining the language as drafted. Additional discussion? Commissioner O'Donnell.
Yeah, thank you. And I certainly agree with everything that you said. I would point out that 2.6.1.3, commissioners shall be unswayed by personal partisan interest, pressure from special or fear of criticism. That is a very, very broad thing. That doesn't apply only to decisions, formal decisions. It applies to everything. So if, for instance, there was a member of the commission that of a particular party and their particular party adopts a plank, whatever, that what this language is saying is that commissioner cannot be influenced by that because that's partisan interest. It is just incredibly overbroad. And if it was very specific, although it is the 2.6, commissioners' impartial, diligent performance of duties. I get that. It's sort of tied in that way. But we don't want to allow any future commission to invoke the shall to penalize somebody for adopting a position that is influenced by somebody of their party or whatever like that. Everybody is influenced by everything that they hear. I mean, we're not computers that it's we're only limited by the information that comes in, and it's sterilized as it comes in, sterilized as it comes out. There are a lot of factors involved in that. So to have the standard of shall, as Commissioner, I think, pointed out, is that we're not anticipating that any hold anybody to that, but a future commission could. And I think that's a very dangerous tool to be given to somebody to use against another commissioner.
Right, additional discussion? Commissioner Bukacek, yes.
I appreciate you standing your ground on this, and I agree wholeheartedly. And this document is full of shalls, and he's only objecting to 2. Okay, so it's full of shalls. There's 2 shoulds, both of them. You expressed it very, very well. I just wanted to add again, it would require mind reading. You would have to read my mind to say that I'm swayed. It's totally, like you said, subjective. You explained it very, very well. Plenty of shalls that Commissioner O'Donnell and I do not have a problem with. This is just two words in the entire document that he's asking to be changed.
One follow-up again, Mr. President, and that is that if a political party adopts something, or the president or the governor or whatever like this, and somebody else does it, which came first, the chicken or the egg type of thing? Did the commissioners have the same opinion because they were influenced by the party, or did they do it independently? And that is incredibly hard to prove unless somebody specifically stated that, so in the absence of that, it does require like mind reading or something like that. But the accusation that says somebody would say, well, you're only doing this because your party leader said to do it, that would be in violation of this thing. And I think therefore that would be really a hazardous tool to be used to divide future commissions. I'm done.
Additional discussion? I could respond to all that, but I'm not going to. I think the language stands on it is. All right, I think we'll clearly take a roll call vote on this. All right, so this is on Commissioner O'Donnell's amendment to amend Code of Conduct 2.6.1.3 and 2.3.3 to strike the word shall and substitute the word should.
A clarification, if I may.
Sure.
2.3 includes the term shall in several places, so it's not just two places. It's I think 6 or 7 places that it would change, which is what concerns me about upending the
Hold on. I believe Commissioner O'Donnell made it that you're only amending 2.3.3.
Correct.
Okay.
2.2 point.
2.3.3.
Yeah, as
Oh, okay.
as Commissioner Bukacek pointed out, there's several places appropriately where the word shall is listed on there. And that's very, very appropriate. I'm just saying that it seems to be inappropriate in these two instances.
Okay, so we're all clear on which section?
I'm clear.
Okay.
Thank you for the clarification.
You betcha. All right. Vice President Field.
I vote no.
Commissioner O'Donnell. Commissioner Pinochi.
No.
I think that was a no.
Yes.
Commissioner Bukacek. And I am a no. Motion fails 3-2. All right. Additional discussion on the Code of Conduct policy, additional amendments. Commissioner Bukacek.
As I stated, as it currently stands, I cannot support the policy, and I'm disappointed those amendments did not pass. I request, I'm going to do 2 different amendments, if I may.
One at a time, please.
Yes, sir. Okay, the first, I request an amendment to remove 2 sentences with the following, and with the following 2, I will vote for the policy. First sentence to strike 2.3.6. And that's page 5. Department personnel shall not attempt to generate public pressure to influence commission decisions.
Where's that again?
One more time. Section
2.3.6.
2.3.6.
It's 2.3.6. It's page 3, excuse me.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so you're moving just to strike this?
Correct.
Okay.
Second.
Hold on. So the motion would be to strike 2.3.6 and then renumber.
Right.
Okay. I think we had a second. Motion and second, discussion. Commissioner Bukacek.
I hope we're all in agreement that the public has every right to contact commissioners and try to influence their decisions. That's why they contact us. We also agree commissioners and staff are protected by the First Amendment right to free speech. I'm confident that none of us intended to give up that right when we joined this agency. And if staff or commissioners expressing their opinions or passing on information influences the public, I think that's fine.
All right. Additional discussion? Vice President Fielder.
Thank you, Mr. President. Respectfully, I oppose the amendment. I think that, again, the committee's work is good and should be respected and upheld. The purpose of the policies here is to avert chaos and allow us to function well together and avoid potential problems with the courts later in terms of questioning a commissioner's impartiality or a staff member's impartiality for that matter. So thinking about, I think most people understand that it's not proper to try to go outside the agency to gin up public comment or to try to pressure the commission to vote a certain way before all of the comment has been received and before we've analyzed all of the evidence and everything. Because we're required to be impartial, we need to allow the public to comment in a organic way that's generated by the public, not generated by the staff or the commissioners. I think that upholding that standard ensures that the propriety of our decisions being based on facts law and allowing the public comment process to be natural and not driven by any particular member of the department. I think that's important. So we can actually hear what the public wants to say, not what a member of the department is telling them that they should say to us.
Right, additional discussion, hold on. Additional discussion,
Sure.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yeah, that is a good explanation. My purpose on seconding is to have a conversation about this. When I first read this, I thought, well, that's sort of putting a muzzle on commissioners in particular from not encouraging supporters to weigh in on a particular issue. But I'm concerned with being that we are quasi-judicial, and as Commissioner pointed out, is courts accusing us of impermissible bias on cases. So if we're quasi-judicial, we should be held to some of the same procedures and standards as judges in regular cases. So I would assume, and having thought about this as Commissioner Fielder was talking, that I've never heard about a judge being proactive on an issue on that. They're there to decide. So should we be held to the same standards on that? We're talking about commissioners and staff because it refers to department personnel. So I'm just talking about how it affects commissioners right now, not necessarily staff. That's a separate discussion, which I'd like to ask more questions about. But in terms of commissioners, should we adopt this in order to maintain the same indifference as a judge is held to? And again, when he takes his oath of office, it's voluntary on his part to be constricted by that way. But should we follow that for that reason? Seems to me that's what Commissioner Fielder was talking about. I see this in a new light right now.
Mr. Chair, if I may, that is the intention, Commissioner, is to raise the standard and to recognize that we are not the legislature. We are quasi-judicial body, and you don't see that happening. You shouldn't see that happening on the courts, as far as the courts reaching out and trying to, build up public support or opposition to a decision that they are about to make. It just would be improper.
Commissioner Bukuchek.
To address several of the things that Commissioner Fielder said, for it to become an organic process, all of the input that people are getting would have to be somehow equal. And we know that oftentimes Montana, basically the news is be very, very biased. So we're not necessarily getting the whole story. I think we all recognize that. And if it's quasi-judiciary, we don't call each other, Honorable O'Donnell, Your Honor. It's quasi-judiciary. And I think that we are in a position, part of the strategic plan is we're supposed to be a source of knowledge. So I don't think that being quasi-judiciary, when we are supposed to be providing information to the public, which is part of our strategic plan and one of my passions, I don't think that this is in opposition to that. And when you said, chaotic, you've talked about disruptive when the public contacts you. I understand that. I don't agree with that. I think that listening to the public and having them contact me, I am very, very open to that. I think it's extremely important. When you use terms like if somebody passes on information or they express an opinion that somehow they're ginning up support or they're telling people you should or you have to go along with me. Just providing information does not do that. It's information that people can take or leave. And it likely is information they're not getting from the standard Montana media. And so, again, it's a hammer. It would stop commissioners from being able to pass on their opinions. It would stop them from being able to pass on information from other people that's important for the public to get. And so I am adamantly for striking this. It could be a horrible muzzle, commissioners that are required to provide information.
Since I was mentioned, may I respond?
Yes, you may.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is not in any way going to thwart commissioners' ability to talk with the public and to interact with the public. This is focused on attempting to generate public pressure to influence commission decisions. There's a big difference between that and telling the public about an issue that's before the commission, providing information, sharing information, pushing out the press releases, pushing out the invitation to comment. We do those things. We encourage commissioners and staff and everyone to share the social media pages that are being put up by the department. So we want the public to be engaged and we want them to know what's going on. This just says that staff and commissioners shouldn't be advocating, generating public interest to advocate for or against a commission decision before it's been made. So it's about the propriety of things after the decision's made, talking about the decision, deliberating and debating a decision here in a civil manner. That's how we operate. That's how we should be operating, is looking at the information that's in front of us, considering the public input that's coming in. Sure, talk to the public about things, explain things to the public, but there's a big difference between that and actually going out and actively trying to stir up public opinion. And one of the things that's problematic about it is we are limited in what we can say publicly, because it would be improper to render a decision on a matter before it's gone through the entire process of having the evidence and the comment periods concluded. And so if somebody is out there telling the public that they should pressure the commission to act a certain way, we basically can't explain or defend or speak against that, because we're limited by the propriety of understanding that we need to wait until all of the information is in before we reach a final conclusion. So I think that the importance here is to have an orderly process where the public is heard and can participate, and where we can talk with each other about our positions, but to do it in a way that's not going to get this agency in trouble in the future and not cause discord in the agency that's damaging to our ability to move forward the way that we're designed to move forward by the legislature.
Hold on. Commissioner Pinocchio, you have not been heard on this, so I'm going to give you that opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I encourage the public to have input, because a lot of our important decisions, especially on rate increases, sometimes no one testifies at all. But then after the rate increase passes, people are very upset that we increased rates, but yet not a single person testified against the rate increase. So a very good answer for public service commissioners to give the public is, this is why it's important that you come testify. There are people, it's rare, that will support a rate increase, but I do believe both sides need to be heard. It's difficult when a commissioner is asked, what do you think? But as an elected official, this is going to happen from time to time. when people elect you and then later ask you, what are your thoughts? I have to be careful because we are judges to say, I can't give you an opinion until I hear all of the testimony. And as a judge, we have to be careful about that. But I'll tell you something that's very frustrating is from time to time, we'll have a room full of people. Some will drive hours to be here. And then we tell them they only have 2 minutes to speak. And then they turn around and say, I couldn't possibly explain everything I needed to explain in the 2 minutes you gave me. And yet I round trip drove 4, 5, 6 hours to be here for 2 minutes. These are important questions and issues to discuss. I guess that's my thoughts, Mr. President.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Pinochi. Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you. So I'm thinking through different scenarios on this. So would it be regarded as an attempt to generate public pressure to influence commission decisions if a commissioner was speaking to a group and said, if you agree with me, contact the commission? Would that fall under that category? But I could see that somebody could make a case that it would. Another example, in the in a matter, well, recently we held a listening session on a particular issue, and some national organizations offered their comments. I have no idea in the world if those organizations were requested by a commissioner. No idea at all. They may have just been watching this because the health thing has national significance. But they might have gone. So would this have been illegal, according to a violation of this policy, for a commission to contact organizations or groups or whatever like this to give their information on a particular issue, on a commission decision? And I could see that happening. Another example, Commissioner Pinochi has laudably and accurately and rightfully advocated for line controls that have great benefit to consumers in the utility. And if he, I think he had a newspaper article about this, had a news release from this commission about that. And if that could be construed as in getting the public to lobby the commission to adopt this, to insist that the utility mandate these improvements or not. I'm just thinking of all the things that could come under this thing that are basically benign by themselves, that could be characterized as being undue influence of the commission's decisions. I think that that would hamper the work of the commission to not have enough robust information from various sources. If you know that some national organization, for instance, or local has particular expertise on something that you would support, would it be a violation of that for a commissioner to contact that organization and say, can you have one of your experts call on this thing, because you could have really good information that might be used to sway commissioners? I just see this as too much abuse that this might engender, and I feel very, very nervous about that, Mr. President.
All right, Commissioner Bukacek.
Very well expressed, Commissioner O'Donnell. And, and those are things that could happen. I mean, there already have been things that have happened just within the last, month or 6 weeks, where one commissioner passed on information from another group and was reprimanded severely by other commissioners. So that is reality. Those are the coulds. that would probably happen. The other has actually happened. So definitely makes it subject to abuses. And picking winners and losers. There could be a subjective, well, I like Randy Pinocchi's, focus on this. I don't like this commissioner's focus on that. So thank you.
Nice.
What I'm referring to is that what's referred to as the law of unintended consequences. That's what I'm referring to.
Yeah.
Vice President Fielder.
Thank you, Mr. President. All comments respectfully noted. I would like to go back to Commissioner O'Donnell's initial change of mind on this, and that was looking at how a court functions. Courts should not be activist. The commission should not be activist. The commission should be making its decisions based on facts and evidence in front of us, and not trying to sway the public to pressure our colleagues into voting a certain way simply because of public pressure. I will add, though, that there is a safety net for this, in that there's a process set up, or if there is a complaint about somebody who's violating the policy, whatever it may be, there is a response team that this policy establishes of very respectable, responsible, mature, professional people that will field those reports and address them in a proper manner. And if it's some superfluous, really benign matter, I'm pretty sure that the response team is going to find that and determine that. So this is designed to have a safety net built in to prevent any type of this being used in what would be construed as an abusive way. I think we should uphold the committee's work on this and try it. Let's try it. See how it works. If the commission thinks and finds that this somehow is stifling, then the commission can come back and amend the policy.
Commissioner Bukacek.
So that 4-person team, they're all fallible. So that's a fact. We all are fallible. And I again stand by what Commissioner O'Donnell said. And after he listened to you initially about what you said about us being quasi-judiciary and sticking to, he agreed with you, but I think he also agreed with some other things that were said after that. So I think you should assume that he's going to be a vote your way. So I think it's highly subject to abuse. And like I said, it's been experienced already on the commission. So it is reality.
You have been referenced twice now, so I'm going to let you address that, and you can tell us what you're thinking, Commissioner O'Donnell.
Well, I'm now looking at this, and I have referred to particular words on here, and so I'm now looking at perhaps there is a rephrase to accommodate both two commissioners' objections and to be consistent with the intent, to be more consistent with our judicial limitations. And I don't know what the language would be, but it would seem to me that there could be language on here that could be constructed to accommodate both situations, so that it is informative, but also not unduly restrictive of commissions. Mr. Hamilton, how do you think that's possible, or you being a wordsmith that you are?
President Brown, Commissioner O'Donnell, I would not have the words off the top of my head to craft a version of this that would satisfy the two interests that I've heard so far on the commission. So I think it would take time and consideration to come up with a different version of this.
So I think somebody referred to adopting the policy. I think Commissioner Fielder said that, and then seeing how it works and moderating it later. That would be acceptable to me. A good policy to see if we can come up with some type of language that accommodates both things. but I would like to see that done soon afterwards. So, yeah, again, as Commissioner Bukacek, I'm really hesitant to adopt this language. And as I say, in terms of the limitations on what a judge can do, I'm swayed by that, but I'm really torn between the yes and the no on the whole thing. But I can't be influenced by anything because that violates the policy. So nobody could speak to the issue to influence me. Conundrum. But I just see this as a problem for commissioners. Other staff, I mean, that's a whole different issue, I think. It does seem to me it would be divisive among staff for staff to pick sides on something publicly, but not necessarily commissioners. So because we're elected, we make promises to people, and like when a judge is running for office, he says, "I will be fair and uphold the law." Well, that's all they can say. They can't say somebody comes to me in a rape thing, they're guilty, or hang them. They can't say stuff like that ahead of time. What can they say? Well, we're under pressure all the time. We get comments from constituents. Are we not allowed to answer them other than saying, "Noted. Thank you for your comment on that"? It's a funny situation, being that we are elected officials and but not hired by the commission. I just see a difference there in how the standard should be applied. But Mr. President, I'm floundering.
Commissioner Bukacek.
I have a question for Lucas also. So this can be stricken, and then it could be, because this is so subject to abuse, and at least two commissioners are in agreement with that. This can be stricken, and then something to satisfy Vice President Fielder's desires and intent, the good intent, can be brought up, can be added later. None of this is set in stone. I think something like this that is so prone to abuse should be stricken and then reintroduce something more palatable. So I stand by my amendment to strike this language.
Mr. President, something important. I know you're
I guess that wasn't a question.
tired of this, but
So
something important.
no. All right. So comment was directed at you. Mr. Hamilton, you are free to not address the comment and let the comment stand.
Very well. I interpreted it as a comment, not as a question.
All right. So Commissioner O'Donnell, this is not string of consciousness.
No, I recall an instance of abuse in the not too distant past where there were 4 commissioners of one political party, 1 of another party, and it seemed to me at the time that the 4 commissioners of the one party were inappropriately and inexcusably teaming up to shame the minority person on there, the minority person who is in line to join this body on January 7th of next year. And I can see where abuses like that could happen for whatever reason. That's one reason why I'm so sensitive about things being used in a malign way. I'm really sensitive about that. Maybe I was referred to one time as the civil libertarian of the young Republicans, and of which I'm proud of that because of sensitivity to how laws can be used, as I say, unintended consequences. So I think we need to be extremely careful. And I agree very much with what Commissioner pointed out is the purpose of this, but also the sentiments of Commissioner Bukacek and myself about, well, not to go over those again, but there are 2 different. I think that the Blue Book can accommodate both of those objectives without being, eliminating one or the other, Mr. President. I'm done.
You're never done, Commissioner O'Donnell. Nope.
Oh.
I am recognizing myself at this point. All right, I really appreciate the conversation and discussion and the tone and tenor of this dialogue this morning, and very professional. In conformance with standards that we hold ourselves out to as commissioners. So thank you to all my colleagues. First, I have a technical question for you, Mr. Hamilton, and then I'm going to make some remarks, and then I'm going to offer a substitute motion. All right, so Mr. Hamilton, so looking at 2.3.6, yes, that's where we're at. The verbiage is department personnel, correct?
That is correct.
So I presume, I was kind of thumbing through the policy here, that department personnel encompasses both commission staff and commissioners, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So I have two thoughts on this. One is that applying this section to commission staff, I absolutely support this language because, as my colleagues well know, commission staff is here, as is stated in our mission statement, Public Service Commission, to provide professional expertise and technical assistance to the commission. And our staff has shown time and again that they do that. That mission of the staff would be undermined by a staffer engaging in essentially lobbying or public pressure attempts to sway a commission decision. It would undermine the trust between commissioners who need the advice and staff that provide it. Separating that out to commissioners, I see or understand views on both sides of this. I'll tell you where I come from on this is that this is me and this is how I operate. So this is where this view is coming from. So much like the discussion on the prior amendment, where we talked about whether or not commissioners should look at the party platform or listen to outside influences, that sort of thing. I have always viewed my role at the commission to be that of a judge who relies on the evidence or the public comment brought before the commission in order to make an informed and fair and unbiased judgment. My view from that comes, of course, from the fact that I practiced law for 20 years, and so it informs me that way. Now, if you take the PSC commissioner role, it is a difficult role, as we have discussed among ourselves as commissioners, because we wear various hats in this role by virtue of the fact that we are partisan elected officials. We are also elected officials that are responsive to constituents in our own districts, but yet a clear portion of our job duties is to literally act as judges on proceedings before us, which the very nature of that requires us to be neutral. And so it is a difficult role to play and a difficult balance to make. For me, it has always been easy to make a decision because what I rely upon is the judgment that I have gleaned from my own investigation and or from the evidence or that sort of thing, and not subject to outside influence. So with that being said, is that I certainly appreciate the comments that were made by Commissioner Pinocci that part of our duties here are clearly to inform the public about what the proceedings are before the commission. And I have done that myself, I've talked to groups saying that X and X proceeding is before the commission. If you're interested in weighing in on this, please contact the commission and make your thoughts known. The line that gets crossed in my mind, where it becomes problematic and the need for this provision is when a commissioner goes from playing the role, which is proper, of being an information giver. I apologize. I'm not feeling very well, as you probably tell. Information giver to being an advocate in a case. And where that becomes problematic is that you are no longer exercising the independent judgment that this position otherwise requires. I referred early in my remarks to the performance audit and the auditor's recommendation to the commission that we adopt a code of conduct that addresses that very concern, because in the auditor's conversations, not only with legislators, but members of the public and with people that practice before this commission, that concern was raised. That was a concern raised about commissioners. So it's a legitimate concern, at least in the minds of those that watch these proceedings. That being said, is that I appreciate that we've had this conversation today, but I am a little bit disappointed in my colleagues and I'm going to give some process that led up to today's meeting. On June 25th, Vice President Fielder sent each of you a memorandum that contained the Blue Book policies that we're discussing today, with the policies and an explanation of all the same. And she requested feedback on any changes that the commissioners would like to see. So you were notified on June 25th. Not only that, during our scheduling meetings, each of the commissioners was advised some months ago that this would be the date that we would consider these policies. Okay? Giving each of you the opportunity to discuss these matters as a commission and with the Blue Book Committee, we publicly noticed a meeting for noon yesterday where these concerns could have been addressed and maybe ironed out, and maybe some consensus could have been made. And yet only 2 commissioners attended that. That would be Vice President Fielder and myself. And yet here we are. So the point of that is that there is a reason why you were provided materials in advance, is that maybe we can come to consensus on some of these matters, but you have to take the time to review them in advance. So with that being stated, I do believe that there is a possible amendment to this that could satisfy both sides of this. Perhaps it is to amend 2.3.6 to add the word "in contested case proceedings" to that, but I am not going to make that motion today. I would make that a point of discussion. Instead, I am going to make a substitute motion to refer the Code of Conduct policy back to the Blue Book Committee for further discussion, with an opportunity to have another meeting of the commissioners to see if we can work through some of the concerns that have been raised today, to see if we can come to some consensus. I am a bit loath to do that because, as my colleagues know, as president of this commission, I have worked very hard to address every single audit finding made by the legislative auditor and to address those so that there are no audit findings hanging over this commission. This will be one of my legacies as president of the commission when I am done in January 2025. The last remaining thing for us to do in 2 fiscal audits and a performance audit is to adopt a new code of conduct. I would like it done sooner rather than later so that we can represent to the legislature that we have listened to their auditor and have addressed their concerns. That being said, I'm offering a substitute motion to refer this back to the Blue Book Committee for further discussion and an additional opportunity for the commissioners to meet in a publicly noticed meeting to discuss the conduct policy. Is there a second?
A second.
Motion is second. Discussion. Seeing none.
Commissioner Bukacek was reaching for. I did want to say something. Yes, and point very well taken. Very well. And I admit that I was remiss in not giving us a lot of attention. As I read these things through the first time and the second time, these things didn't really percolate within me. So my comments today are basically not from a first reading, but from conversations and thinking about this thing. And just my thought process is that my subconscious keeps on working on things and they come up with other thoughts about things. So I apologize. I really mean this to giving the appearance of not having participated before. But and as I pointed out earlier, as Commissioner Fielder explained certain things, I said, oh, well, that's an interesting consideration. And other thoughts occurred to me at the times of the examples that I used, whatever. And it's in this type of a setting that those thoughts come up. So again, I support the motion. And again, my apologies for appearing to be not paying attention to my work. Thank you.
Apologies accepted. You didn't need to apologize. Additional discussion. Vice President. Fielder.
Thank you, Mr. President. Is the object of your substitute motion to specifically work on 2.3.6 to see if we can arrive at an improvement there? Are you proposing we go back through the entire policy?
Thank you for the clarification. My intent would be to just have the entire policy available for discussion.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bukacek.
Excellent solution, Mr. President. And I did send email comments and I was not there in person. I look forward to a meeting. I think it'll be very meaningful, very helpful. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Panochi, anything you would like to add?
I would like to thank President Brown for his comments. I think he handled this situation very well, especially the point of if we're going to have a meeting on Blue Book policy and there's a chance to go over concerns when no one shows up, then later it's kind of hard to say, hey, I want to make changes, but I didn't bother showing up to the meeting. This is exactly what I wind up telling my constituents. So thank you for that opportunity and the way you handled it, sir. Thank you.
All right, seeing no further discussion. All those in favor of the substitute motion signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed signify by saying no. A motion carries unanimously. Again, I apologize to everybody for how I sound today. God, whatever crud is going around, and it's certainly dragging me down. So I apologize to my colleagues and to the public. All right, so let's move on to work session item number 3. This is a commission initiated matter. This is a litigation status update. We are, as a commission, to receive an update on currently pending litigation to consider litigation strategy. This next session will be closed to the public, and I would note, of course, for constitutional compliance purposes, that the presiding officer of any state meeting may close the meeting during the time discussion relates to a matter of litigation and or litigation strategy. And the presiding officer, who is myself in this case, determines the need to protect agency litigation, decision-making, and discussion exceeds the merits of public disclosure. The upcoming closed session will involve discussions and decision-making related to ongoing litigation in which the agency is involved as a party. So before I close the next section of the meeting, I would just say that upon conclusion of the closed session that we will adjourn today's meeting, and I will announce that because the commissioners will be scattered to the wind next week, we will not be having the regularly scheduled business meeting next week. Our next commission business meeting will be Tuesday, July 23rd, 2024 at the regularly scheduled time, 9:30 a.m. With that being said, we'll move into closed session. The time is now 11:13. Let's reconvene in 5 minutes. Yes, we will adjourn upon the conclusion of the closed session. We will meet in the commission conference room. Thank you, colleagues.